The NBA is about to go through a huge change with their new futuristic basketballs coming, but there are still so many questions about the airless basketball. Like, will these things even work? Will the players be happy with the change? And are these things really the future of the sport we all love? Wilson is the NBA's partner for basketballs, and they're close to making these airless basketballs ready for use in the NBA. The design hexagonal holes allow air to pass through is such a unique approach to basketball design, on paper at least. But the entire issue at hand is if the basketball will actually feel and operate like a traditional basketball. And along those same lines, there are some things that could potentially raise some red flags. The only time we got to see this airless basketball in use was recently in the slam dunk contest by Kenyon Martin Jr., who you could see is gripping and bouncing the ball here before his dunk, and later said that the airless basketball felt like, quote, a normal leather ball. And shortly after that dunk contest, Wilson shared a few videos about the ball explaining how they're made, and it's actually quite breathtaking. The method used in manufacturing these balls revolves around modern 3D printing. Wilson said that they experimented with various 3D printing techniques, but the only one that succeeded in replicating the feel of a genuine basketball, while ensuring it has the same bounce and even better durability than the old basketballs, was a process known as SLS, or selective laser sintering. The way these specific laser printers operate is also strange. The entire process essentially involves a powdered bed and a laser that carves the design to form the ball. Once the ball is extracted from the powdered bed and all remaining powder is shaken out, a solid 3D printed ball remains. Pretty cool, right? The powder is then sealed using a special technique, and the basketballs are dyed black, of course, as you saw in the dunk contest. But going back to what Kenyon Martin Jr. said about the basketball and its original feel is really interesting, and it might seem like something small and only the opinion of one person, but knowing the recent history of ball changes in the NBA, you'll come to realize that Kenyon Martin saying that is actually a great first sign, unlike what happened years ago. Because there's this story about how the NBA was close to failure once already with a significant change they made to their basketballs nearly 2 decades ago. See, back in 2006, the NBA changed their basketballs from leather to microfiber composite, and it was a change that so many players in the NBA absolutely hated. The reason behind the composite material was that this was seen as the future of NBA basketballs by numerous sporting good manufacturers at the time. They were cheaper to produce than leather balls, and they were supposed to feel like the most comfortable to grip basketball of all time. This style of basketball had already been in use for several years at the high school and college level, but no one thought at the time that the NBA would quickly follow suit. So, in order to get players acclimated to the new basketball, the NBA sent all the players a new ball over during the offseason so they could begin practicing with it. But quite opposite to what the NBA expected, many players downright called out the basketball, complaining publicly about the flaws it had. One longtime NBA vet said about the new balls, quote, "Right off the rim, when I first started gripping it, I didn't like it. It felt like plastic." But little did the NBA know that releasing these new balls would end up causing an all-out nightmare when the balls were sent for use in training camps later that year in October. NBA superstars like Steve Nash, Dirk Nowitzki, Shaquille O'Neal, and Ray Allen wasted no time in voicing their hatred of the new balls and trashed them in public. Ray Allen, who, keep in mind, was the greatest shooter in NBA history at the time, said straight up that it's changed a lot of what we are and who we are. At the beginning of the year, I kept an open mind to it. Overall, you see the league, shots aren't like they used to be. Every player I've talked to is in disagreement with the ball. And so after just a couple of months of use in the 07-08 NBA season, the NBA pulled the plug on this obviously failed experiment, and it got so bad that the commissioner at the time, David Stern, was forced to say publicly that the NBA badly messed up, quote, "I won't make a spirited defense in respect to the ball. In hindsight, we could have done a better job. I take responsibility for that." So, looking at these new airless basketballs that are on the come up, it's important to note that even if the airless basketball is successful in testing, it will take time before the NBA decides that the new balls are fit for use in actual games. And seeing what happens when they made a huge change to the balls in 2006, I think it's safe to say these balls are going to go through rigorous modes of testing before they're made ready. And speaking of testing, a ton of that has already happened with Wilson saying that they've, quote, rigorously tested the basketball, even testing the basketball by swinging a baseball bat to ensure that it's plenty durable. Following this process, they send their basketball to the NBA's testing facility in Ohio, where the basketballs are put through more testing. Once it's complete, the result is a 3D printed basketball that never needs to be inflated and bounces just like a traditional basketball while maintaining the exact size and weight. The basketball's uniqueness is undeniable, though that doesn't nearly dismiss the potential many downfalls of this one-of-a-kind experiment, especially just looking at the ball in and of itself with holes in its structure and no air pumped inside. There are a few issues. One being the air resistance of the ball in the air and how it could drastically change the way players are used to shooting the ball. Will this futuristic basketball still fly through the air like a normal basketball, even with all the holes in it? There's going to be a ton more airflow passing through the ball, which raises questions about any potential impact on a shot when the ball is spinning in the air. Even though there is no concrete data or evidence to support this yet, many people have questioned this aspect of the ball and its aerodynamics because of how it resembles a wiffle ball, which is known to curve dramatically compared to a regular ball. However, it's important to note that this basketball isn't very lightweight. This ball is actually designed to weigh the same as a regular basketball, and it is believed that this will actually result in better performance outdoors, especially in windy conditions, compared to an ordinary basketball. All of my real ones know how impossible it can be to play basketball outside on a windy day, but since the ball allows air to flow through it, it could theoretically be less affected by light winds during play. If this proves to be true, this ball could become the ideal outdoor basketball. But that also might mean players must adjust how they shoot the ball. Does this new ball bounce the same way as a traditional basketball? Wilson stated that they conducted tests at various angles to ensure consistent bouncing, regardless of whether it lands on the holes or grooves. But we don't have enough evidence to see the full picture yet, especially with it being TBD whether these new balls will lose their bounce over time in a game. Other concerns include the high potential for sweat debris to get stuck in the holes, which can seriously impact the ball's performance as the game wears on. And the feel of the ball may not be the same as a traditional basketball is going to take some getting used to on its own. Look, regardless of how big or small the change, there's going to be a huge learning curve with whatever future the NBA has with these prototype airless basketballs. Just look back to 2021 when the NBA changed their basketball from Spalding to Wilson, a rather small change. But the players immediately disliked the change because guys were missing shots. Badly. It was just bad. In fact, Damian Lillard shot 23% from 3 to start the season. Steph Curry is the greatest shooter ever, but had the worst three-point efficiency season in a decade. And guys were airballing free throws more regularly. All of this led to the NBA as a whole shooting their worst from three-point range since 1998. That's way back when guys were only taking a couple threes in a game at the most. All in all, we know very little at this point in time about these new basketballs and how close we truly are to seeing the NBA take the plunge on them. Whatever the league decides to do, better get the approval from players. Or else, this would go down as one of the most embarrassing failures that no one would want to remember. But your opinion matters too, so drop your thoughts down below on these basketballs and tell me, are airless basketballs really the future of the NBA? Or will this be a complete flop?